Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Marriage is Tougher Than Woodpecker Lips podcast. This is Brian.
And I'm Paul. We'd like to welcome you to a community meant for the men of the world to share our thoughts and perspectives on marriage.
We can learn from each other's experiences and help each other be better husbands. Now, let's get right into the show.
So, today we are going to talk about sterilization. Thanks for hanging out with us, new listeners. We appreciate it. And you've been rocking with us for a while. We definitely appreciate that. We're just going to take the perspective of two guys that, have had a procedure, talk about that, as well as the conversations we've had with some other people. So, let's get into it.
Also, we want to invite you to join us on social media. Any of the conversations we have, if you'd like to continue those, please do that over on Instagram, searching Marriage is Tougher. If you'd like to be a guest or would like to just suggest an idea for a topic or episode, you can do that on our website or also on Facebook. Then also, you can make sure to hop over on YouTube. You can catch all of our video episodes there, see our lovely faces, and catch all of our reactions because we hear we're pretty funny. But either way, we're going to get right into this episode. So keep listening. All right. So sterilization.
Dun, dun, dun. Or the happy dance.
Oh, man. So I just had my procedure done middle of October. So I'm fresh off of this and thought it would be pertinent to talk about it while it was still fresh in my mind. There was a bunch of jokes, as it were. Some of my buddies were saying how they probably wouldn't do that, but then they also wanted the full report, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've made sure to give that to them. Um, the recovery, to my surprise, for such a sensitive area was very quick. Right, I'm already back to full action. They recommend that you take about a week off of heavy lifting and all that stuff. Um, and it wasn't that you can't lift; it's more or less like they don't want you to damage anything, right? And so I heeded the warning, which was tough with three little kids, right?
Right.
Because they're always jumping on my lap, pick me up, daddy, throw me around. And then I have my youngest is less than 2. She'll be 2 in December. And, all she wants to do is be picked up. But, we managed, we got through, feeling good. And, like I said, I just felt like it was the right time to have a conversation about it. Now, Paul, you have also had this procedure done.
Yes, it was years ago now. And it was definitely different than I thought it would go, in the sense that I didn't have a conversation with anyone about it except, have you had it? How long did it take to recover? Right? Because it is such a sensitive uh space to talk about. But like you said, it was less than what I had built it up to do. It was pretty quick. It's you realize it's a routine thing that the doctors and nurses do all the time. So it's not a big deal for them. It's more of a big deal for us.
Right.
And it's smooth transition. You heed the warnings, um, and you go from there. And you have a pretty good weekend on the couch watching football. At least that's what I did.
Yeah, pretty much. Also, so pro tip: do it during football season.
Absolutely, preferably toward the end of October, middle November, because that's when the games get better on the
Yep.
college level.
Yep.
And if you have red zone on Sunday, it's a great day.
Oh man. So talking about it being a sensitive subject, quick funny story. I was at work and on the phone with the doctors and nurses and billing just to get all my ducks in a row before I go in there, which is going to be another part of this conversation. But I kept telling people, hey, I'm going to be off on this day. If you don't know, typically they do these procedures on a Friday. And I was telling people, hey, I'm going out for surgery. And people being concerned as they typically do, like, oh, is anything wrong? This, this, that, and the third. It's like, oh, no, I'm just going to have my vasectomy done. And dependent on the person you tell that to, you get different reactions. Some guys are like, oh, right. And the guys who've actually had it done are like, all right, cool. And then a couple of the women, if you say that to them, they're like, oh, sorry, didn't want to bring that up. Right? Like it's a sore subject or
Yeah.
something. I mean, you will be sore for a couple of
Yeah,
days.
that's
Say.
it. Just a couple days.
But I just thought that was funny, the different reactions I got.
Yeah, it's definitely a different reaction from those who have had it than those who haven't.
Yes.
And it's like either, man, it's a good life right now for those who have had it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're getting it. You can still get those. But
Yeah. Should we well, I think maybe I personally want to know what you mean when you say the good life right now.
the good life right now is, unless God comes down and changes the path of this vasectomy,
Yeah.
there will be, once you have decided with your spouse that we're not going to have any more kids, like it's basically a guarantee, and there's never a worry of something being off, something being wrong, something slipping, something, any of that. Like you no longer have to worry
Yeah.
on that side. And if your um wife has been on birth control
Mhm.
and all that, like you can relieve her from, that responsibility, which I was listening to a comic, it came across my Instagram feed, and he was talking about, I've never heard a woman excited about saying she's switching birth control and or having a good experience. So he just started talking about different types and the things, mood swings and like bloating and, he took it to the comic like, yeah, I switched this one and then I strangled my grandma, right?
Ah,
I was like, yeah, I've heard those horror stories, and just being able to relieve um, your wife from that. Or if, for those who've, it's so physically taxing for your wife that she's not on birth control, because I've seen that too. Like every time there's the possibility, if, you know, things don't work out the way that it should, that you could get pregnant.
yeah.
And so that's what I mean, the good life. It's free of that. Like, are we good?
Yes. I've unfortunately had that conversation plenty of times with my wife. A little nervous. But the funny thing is I'm glad you brought up the birth control because Katie has struggled in this area. And just in listening to her talk about her struggles, I didn't understand that like they had to be so regimented with their doctor's appointments, right? And I know there was a time where she said, I really don't like this one. Wish I could just get off of it. And this is kind of like what spurred the conversation to get the sterilization procedure done. We, or what, once we were talking about that, she was telling me that, and I forget exactly what it was that the medication was doing, but when she wanted to change it, which is the most important part, she couldn't just change it. She had to wait until her next doctor's appointment, and then the doctor also had to agree to change it. Like they could have just denied the change, which is
Mm-hmm.
crazy to me. But after this,
Right. That's out the window.
yeah,
Good.
hopefully, right? We still have this
Oh,
3 test
mm-hmm.
to see if the procedure took fully. which, I'm hoping everything goes well and she'll be able to get off that birth control because, like you said, there could be a bunch of different side effects and whatnot. And I think she's on one that she likes now, but to the extent that she can like it, right?
Right. Right.
It's not preferable. It's just preferable to the other medications that she
Right.
has tried. So, um, I want to ask you, how did you and Crystal approach this conversation wise? Like what were the deciding factors that, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get this done?
Yeah, I think it actually started a little bit when we were talking about, if we were blessed to be able to have kids easily,
Mm-hmm.
um, how many did we want and at what ages would we want to do that? Because my wife she's older than I am, so it's like, it's just harder on your body the older you get to carry a child. Um, so it was a little starter. Like once we got together, we talked about it a little bit. Like, okay, how many do we want to have? I was praying for twins. That didn't happen. We have Bella, which is great. And then shortly after that is like a revisit. Like, are you sure you'll be good with, just Isaiah and Belle? And it was like, yeah. And then at that point, I was like, all right, when are you gonna do this? And um, she never really pushed like you need to have this done, but it was like she um has had issues with birth control. So it it was better for us for me to get the vasectomy so that she wouldn't have to deal with those issues or have to deal with the are we good question.
Right.
so,
Right.
so um that's basically what it was, and also the timing, like because not knowing how the recovery went and we were pretty busy traveling, all that type of stuff. um when is it good? But I think the main factor was like there's really no reason not to get it, so let's just do it.
Yeah.
That's how that's how we circled back around to it, and I was like, oh, I guess I should.
Yeah. For us, it was probably similar, the discussion of how many kids do you want, more or less for us, because it's been so easy to have them. It was like, are we done? And once we came to that decision, it became the decision of, well, the hysterectomy is so much more difficult on the woman to have that procedure done that it just makes more sense for the man to have the vasectomy performed. And I was on board, not a big deal. Of the people I spoke to, they all had a good experience, as good as it could be, I guess. And so I wasn't like nervous or scared going into it. Um, you know, which was another story. I was actually supposed to have this surgery done a while back. So it was like sometime within COVID, I had reached out, found a doctor, set up a consultation. And for whatever reason, my consultation got canceled. I believe they said that the doctor had a surgery that day. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, why would you book a consultation at the same time you have a surgery? I don't get it. But either way, that got canceled. And then I just started putting it off for a while. And then Katie went into the different medications.
Mm.
And when she started struggling with that, is when she was like, "Look, you really need to pick the ball back up on this one and run with it." So I did. And we're done now, hopefully. But uh, I don't know where I was going with that story.
Well, I mean, for me, I'll say while we're talking about like booking appointments and stuff,
Mm,
it I think one of the reasons it took so long for it to happen for me was it was all on me to get that whole process going. Like normally my wife is um, the one who figures out where our doctors are and if we're going to change, why, and that type of stuff. And she makes the initial call. But on this one, it was like, oh, it's all you. It only involves you. Like, I'm not at like figure out, Google something and find someone who's in our coverage and go for it. So, because one, I don't like calling places, it was like one of those things that I just put off. Um, and I think I don't know, maybe I'm not the only guy that has been there as far as appointments. So when you mentioned putting it off, so I didn't, once I found my doctor and did the procedure, it was pretty easy. The office that we went to was known for doing it, all that type of stuff. But then the office shut down between when I went and had the procedure and my follow up to make sure. So I went to the first follow up, and then there was another one like to make sure that everything took. Um, so it was actually a lot longer of a process to get the I'm good, because
Right.
I went to go back after I had taken too long to say, hey, I want to make my appointment. And they're like, oh yeah, we're sorry, this office is no longer a thing.
Oh man.
Um, Luckily though, my primary care, they could take care of that. It's just like giving blood. So like
Right,
they
right.
just take it, see it's all good. But it was weird because I couldn't understand the reading on my chart. Like because it wasn't like you're good to go. It just said the doctor's term that everything is good, but it didn't make sense. Like I was like, is it good? So I had to call and they were like, oh yeah, it says this. I was like, yeah, but what does that mean?
Yeah,
Like, oh,
where's
you're good to go.
the
Like,
on
am
a
I good
big
or
green
not?
check mark?
Right. Right. I need that. I need the thumbs up, the check mark or something. Um, but yeah, I think that was probably the biggest barrier in the process for me, was being diligent about going to the appointments. And as a guy, right, like as you said, once women are older, they at least have their annual that they need every year with their OB. So they at least have that going. Like we don't have anything that is a need.
Right.
So it's just like, I guess I'll call the doctor. It's kind of time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I lean and I see that's probably not the best. But that's kind of my experience. Um, yeah, but talk about how has it changed your like how has it affected your relationship, or did it, or did you think there would be a possibility to that it would?
I think that I might not have gone into the area where post op the relationship will have changed yet, right? Because until that 3 month checkup, I don't necessarily know if I'm good or not.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So I think there's still more to be determined in that area. I think leading up to it, Katie may have thought that I could possibly have given more resistance than I did because I gave none.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know that I could really speak on that too well, right? But I think if I had to guess, the freedom that we were talking about earlier is going to be good for our relationship. Uh, and you
Yeah.
can run with your
Hmm.
imagination on that one,
Yeah.
but I just wholeheartedly believe that it's going to be good for our relationship. And going back to what you said with making the appointments and doing all the follow up and everything, I don't necessarily think I took into account how much I was going to have to do in order to do that, but it was the same scenario for me. She was like, "You need to get this done, get it done." And I think I probably took it to another level. because it's like, well, since I'm here, I might as well find out all the information. And so, went to the consultation and I'm asking the doctor, hey, how much does this cost? Doctor doesn't know. And that was weird to me, but they pointed me in a direction. And after a few phone calls, I finally found out that if I didn't have insurance, there was one cost, right? And that cost was $750. And apparently, there's programs to help people who don't have insurance. So if you're wondering about that, there's probably a program in your area where it could be relatively low cost for you, depending on what your situation is. And then I went further and I said, well, obviously, I do have insurance. And the question I'm actually asking you is, what price are you going to charge my insurance? I'm not asking for how much I'm responsible for. I can do that math. How much are you going to charge my insurance? And that number was over $6,000. And then going through even further, because I then wanted to talk to the insurance, and I said, well, obviously, you're not going to approve that entire amount. What amount are you going to approve so I can figure out what I'm responsible for? And the amount they approved was just over $2,000. So it made my responsible amount less than 500, which is great um, to have all that information, But just wanted to share that with you guys. The money details, obviously, depending on where you are, those prices could more than likely vary wildly. But there are some options out there. And if you are, needing to pay cash, then ask about those programs because they typically do exist.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to circle back real quick before we kind of finish this one up. But the question, we had a couple conversations about, was I really good with the finality of this?
Mm,
And we circled around about that because, I mean, it is a final thing.
yeah.
So, and it's happening to my body, right? So, my wife gave me space, and like you, I didn't really have any reservations. Again, like I said, there's really only a certain amount of time you should have kids in the window of how old you want to be once they're graduating, high school, and how involved you want to be, and again, the toll on my wife's body. So it was just like, no, like we gotta, this is not it. I'm trying to live life and, do all that. And to speak on the effects, um, if nothing else, I'll just say this, if nothing else, like wondering if if you're gonna be surprised with a baby is definitely a freeing thing when it's not on the table at
Right, right,
all.
right.
So
Yeah, that's lovely. I I don't know that Katie asked me specifically if I was okay with the finality part of it, right? I feel like that might be more of a thing for women than it is for men. I don't, would you agree?
well, it might be depending on the age, depending on how many
Okay.
kids you have, how your pregnancies went.
Hmm.
In our case, it was specifically because we're a blended family, and I didn't, and Bella was not a boy. So it's like that question of, guys really want that boy for their namesake,
Right.
for nothing else. It was more the namesake thing. Um, and I really had to come to terms like, am I good with that? But then at the same time, is it worth, whether I'm good or not, which I was good, but if I wasn't good at this point, is it worth trying to get pregnant just for that
Right.
and bring in another kid and, now higher maternal, at risk maternal age to carry a child? All of the babies have been large. They've all been over 8'5",
Yeah.
longer than 21 inches. Like, she's a tiny person. That's not really a thing that we should do,
Yeah.
So it was easy for me to be like, logically, like, no, not
Yeah.
even.
That's funny how for me that never really crossed my mind because I already had in my first two children a girl and then a boy. So that's not necessarily something I had to think about. So I'm glad you brought up that point. You know, I in my world, like I was good to be done with two, you know, and then we had a third, which is great and lovely, and love my family. But being done for me was more a consideration of age and not wanting my youngest child to lose out on dad's ability to be active, So once I decided that's where I wanted to be, uh, I didn't want to be a grandpa with a 5-year-old,
Right.
you know. So yeah, it was an easy decision for me, and more or less uh, joint decision, right? And we got through it. Is there anything else you could think of that you might want to throw out
No,
here, or anything that we missed?
no, I think it was just a good conversation to talk about. I'm glad that you brought up their different programs to help those that may want to get it done, but think it's going to be astronomical. Obviously, it varies by region and plans for your doctor, but that was good.
Yeah, I've got some really good insurance, so it worked out for me.
Yeah.
If you don't, like I said, there's different programs out there, and just be willing to ask. It's just what it is. But hey, I do want to again invite you to reach out and link up with us on our socials. Searching Marriage is Tougher. You can find us everywhere, just about. And if we're not everywhere, we'll be everywhere soon. So with that, thanks for listening. If you got any value out of this episode, we'd like to invite you to rate, follow, and review on your favorite podcast platform.
If you would like to be a guest or want to have your questions answered, hit us up on our website, marriageisttougher.com, or follow us on Facebook, searching Marriage is Tougher Than Woodpecker Lips. Thanks again. This is Paul.
And this is Brian. We will talk to you next time.